Valentine's bouquets come in all shapes and prices, but how do you know which one's best when there's so many out there to choose from? Well, it's simple. 1-800-Flowers.com is your Valentine's go-to. Right now, when you order early, you can get 24 multicolored roses for only $29.99. Or upgrade to 24 romantic red roses for only $10 more. It's an unbelievable Valentine's offer from 1-800-Flowers. 24 multicolored roses for just $29.99. Or upgrade to red roses for only $10 more. Roses from 1-800-Flowers are picked at their peak, shipped overnight to ensure freshness and her amazement. 24 multicolored roses for only $29.99 or an upgrade to 24 red roses for just $10 more is the perfect reward for thinking ahead. Look, make sure you lock in this offer. It's only good while supplies last. To order 24 multicolored roses for $29.99 or upgrade to 24 red roses for only $10 more, go to 1-800-Flowers.com, click on the radio icon, and enter the code WINGO. That's 1-800-Flowers.com and enter code WINGO. Order today at 1-800-Flowers.com, code WINGO.
This is the Best of Golic and Wingo podcast.
Free Meek! Free Meek!
Let them know.
Good Monday morning and welcome into another edition of Golic and Wingo. Trey Wingo, Mike Golic Jr. That's our board up Cliff from Philly. So I don't want to hear nothing but Philadelphia songs today, brother. You keep them going all day long, all right? You got it?
I got you, man.
You got it. You celebrate this. You know why? Because it took you a long damn time to get here.
25 years.
1960 was the last NFL championship in the city of Philadelphia, and they took up the world. They shocked the world. They did it all as the Philadelphia Eagles took down the New England Patriots. We are presented by Progressive Insurance, and all phone guests join us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. I guess football's doing okay.
Yeah, let me tell you.
Football's all right.
That was, that was going along the lines of how we'd seen a New England Patriot game fall behind, and then just say, okay. Because how many people coming toward the end, as we obviously go through this whole game, of when Philly's got the ball and they're going down to kind of get a little bit of padding, burn the clock. Oh, they don't have enough time to burn the clock. And New England's going to get the ball back. Here we go again. It was all set up for that. But boy, what a game. You know, in a game where you know the type of quarterback you have on the one side and Tom Brady and the backup on the other side, but the talk of the defenses. And then you have an offensive output like that, as we'll get into, most yards ever in a postseason game, in a Super Bowl, in a regular season game. It was ridiculous, the yardage going up and down the field. But I'll say this, as we go through this game, you have a Super Bowl where the ball is in the air, in the end zone on the last play of the game. You got some excitement going on as you got a pass to, and Brady to Gronkowski. Well, everybody's down there, but it's Gronk who is closest to the ball. You're like, wow, okay, great ending.
Yeah, we were still narrowly missing a Patriots potential tie towards the end of that game because you're right. You just kept looking and doing the math of the time on the clock and saying it's way too much for Tom. It's way too much for Tom. We've seen this song and dance way too many times, and give the Eagles credit because in a game where defense was supposed to be the story, and it wasn't for the vast majority of the game, when it came down to it and there was about 2:16 left and Tom had that chance to drive the length of the field, that group finally showed up. Brandon Graham finally hit pay dirt with that strip sack, and it completely changed the outcome of this game by finally stopping the Patriot offense from moving because they sure as hell weren't going to stop themselves. One penalty, count them, one penalty for the Patriots the entire night last night.
Which, of course, tinfoil hat conspiracy.
Yes.
See, I told you. Look, there's a lot to get into today. It's a big game breakdown brought to you by the Jared Gallery of Jewelry, turning feelings into jewelry. That's why he went to Jared, and we will break it down in total. Here are the guests that we have coming up today. At 7:30, Tim Hasselbeck will join us, our ESPN analyst. At 8:05, what's left of Sal Paolantonio, Philadelphia intrepid reporter, will join us. The big man, Damian Woody, will join us at 8:30. 9:05, Drew Bledsoe, a four-time Pro Bowler, will also join us. But simply put, before we get into any of the details, the dynamics, the minutia, the decisions, the calls, which there were a couple of them, was this the best Super Bowl ever?
Well, ever. Listen, you would be better at that than us because you remember we just throw a Super Bowl out there. He knows the score, the MVP, and all that. So I am not one of those. I am not a great history guy to look back on other games and say, was this great or was that great? So I'm a horrible person to ask. You seem to be a good person to ask. So where are you on this? A game where the first lead New England took was 33-32, and then they didn't score another point. and the game ends on a Hail Mary. So where are you with this?
Well, it depends on how you feel about punting and place kicking.
Yeah, how about it?
I mean, because there was only one punt. By the way, a buddy of mine, and I must, he's probably not listening, so I can say it now, John, Jay-Z, works with the club. He said, everybody will say this game was great, but I say lousy defense and one punt equals a boring game. I said, let me get this straight.
Boring?
Your platform is you're pro-punting? I mean, that's
we
your
didn't see
platform?
the punter enough?
We didn't see the punters enough? Really? That's how you're going to denigrate this game? And I followed it with, just get out of here.
Yeah.
So I would have to say this might be the most entertaining Super Bowl of all time. Now, Super Bowl 25 comes to mind because the Giants were huge underdogs against the Buffalo Bills, blah, blah, blah. And they came up with that great game plan, and they sort of had the wide right game there at the end. This one's way up there, man. It is way up there in terms of what from a historical perspective, what the Patriots as a franchise were trying to do. Join the Steelers as the only other team with six.
Yeah.
What Brady was trying to do, be the only player with one for the other thumb. Remember, he and Charles Haley are the only two with 5. He was going for 6. With what Philadelphia was able to achieve, the longest drought, for so long, 1960 was the last time they had an NFL championship. All those parameters in place, and what happened, I think it might have been the greatest Super Bowl.
The greatest or most entertaining?
Most entertaining.
Is there that's two different things to you?
Yes, it is, because you can make the argument, hey man, give me 1 or 2 great defensive plays. Give me something like that. And we saw some of those in the first half. Malcolm Jenkins was all over the field in the first half of this game. And I know that sounds crazy the way it turns out, but I was thinking, well, he might be the MVP of this game.
Listen,
the way he was all over the field.
For 2 defensive guys, you say Malcolm Jenkins, and in the second half, Stephon Gilmore shut down Alshon Jeffrey. Yep. Alshon Jeffrey had a monster beginning of the game. They put Gilmore on him, and that was it. So those are little things that we'll talk about in the game. And one of the things for you, Mike, to sit there and talk about is pressure from the Eagles. So this from an O-line. I remember my buddy who was my teammate in Philly and then in Miami, Ron Heller, would always say, and every O-lineman would say, you could sit there and play great for 65 plays. But there's 67 plays, and 2 of those plays are a sack or a sack fumble.
Yep.
And it looks bad. So here you are with the offensive line playing well in what was it? The first 10 drives, their percentage was, they were giving up 18% of the pressure. And the first 9 drives, there were 10 pressures. That was only 18% of pressure. But in the last 2 drives, 70% of the rushes were in pressure. So that O-line for New England was playing their butts off against an excellent line from the Philadelphia Eagles until the last couple of drives. So as an O-lineman, how damning is that you do well the entire game, and then a couple of plays at the end up costing you?
Well, it's the frustrating nature of the position, because people then use that to color their diagnosis of the entire game, when really it's just a good job creating matchups and understanding the pieces that you have involved there. We talked a lot about Fletcher Cox, and we figured he would be a guy that would be more active in the stat column, managed to notch a couple of pressures at the end of the game on the biggest play defensively for them in particular, though, draws the double team, the center slides away with the left guard to take care of him. And because you've got Brandon Graham, who's that defensive end style sort of NASCAR unit mentality,
exactly.
Kick down on the inside, which is never a favorable matchup for someone playing in the interior offensive line, you get that end result. So it's a good job by Philadelphia and Jim Schwartz defensively, scheming despite not wanting to be a team that brings a ton of pressure to ultimately get home, but impossibly frustrating. And you understand that's just the nature of the position. You're better when your name's not getting called, but you play long enough. Sometimes you're the bear, and sometimes the bear gets you.
By the way, my friend who I said wasn't listening apparently was.
He is listening.
Jay-Z, man, sorry, you're pro-punting. You're going to get called out. If your stance is pro-punting, you're always going to get called out on this show. I mean, that's just the way it's
I don't know how anybody could say the game was
I missed
boring.
punting. I needed more punts.
I'm a little, disappointed as a former defensive player with over 1,150 yards of offense in that game.
Well,
so I was not overly ecstatic about that, but the game was not boring.
No, here's the list. I mean, here's the amazing thing. Okay, forget the title and what it means. Here's what we saw on the field on Sunday. Most yards passing in a game, 505, Tom Brady.
Right.
Most yards passing in his career in the Super Bowls, Tom Brady. Most passing attempts career, Tom Brady. Most passing completions career, Tom Brady. Most passing touchdowns career, 18, Tom Brady. Most games career, Tom Brady. Most games career head coach, 8, Bill Belichick. Okay, and they lost. As for the teams, most total net yards, 1,151. Most total net yards, one team, 613, New England Patriots. Most yards passing game, 500, New England. Most yards passing both teams, 874. Most first down passings, both teams, 42. Most points game, losing team, 33. Fewest punts game, team, New England, 0. Fewest punts games, both teams, 1. Most missed PAT conversions, game, both teams, 4, including the two extra points. Most Super Bowl appearances, 10, New England. Those are just the records that were set in this game, man. Okay, give me half of those and you'd be like, whoa, give me the gift with my mind blown. That all happened in one game. In one game.
Yeah. Listen, I'm with you. I think it was unbelievably exciting, and I thought it was setting up, again, perfectly for the fact that Tom Brady was going to bring his team down and they were going to get the win. But the one thing about Philadelphia is you give them credit because you just saw the other side of that against Jacksonville when they kind of went into a shell. Philly, we knew, would stay aggressive, and they stayed aggressive with their play calling. That last drive when they kicked that last field goal, I was looking for like a second down pass maybe to get a first down, to really end the game, and they went 3 runs, kicked the field goal, which put you up by 8. I get it, but Tom Brady still got the ball. I don't care they didn't have timeouts at that point. Tom Brady has the ball, and Tom Brady does magical things. So I was thought maybe on second down would have been the chance to try and get that first down, pass for it.
I think it's interesting considering Philadelphia, and we read in this in the lead up to the Super Bowl, that this had been a team that had, through the benefit and the use of analytics, found areas where with Doug Peterson's style and his play calling tendencies could find spots to pick and choose fourth down calls, ways to push the gas that would give them an advantage. And we saw those pop up in this game for them. That was one instance where you look at what it affords you and you say, all right, if we burn time off the clock, you gave the Patriots the ball back without about a minute 9 left, down 8. So not only would they have to go the length of the field and score, where you finally put it on your defense to do something, they would also need the 2-point conversion. Right. So you add even more variance to that would make it difficult. I feel like that's the one spot in a team where we're going to laud Doug Peterson all day, and rightly so, for being aggressive. That was the spot there to maybe throw your off-speed pitch that probably helped benefit them as much as any decision.
Yeah, we are Golic and Wingo on ESPN Radio and ESPN2, presented by Progressive Insurance. All phone guests will join us via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. And look, let's be honest, the Eagles defense didn't do much.
No.
But they made that play late to protect the lead. Protecting the lead brought to you by ADT. Considering home security? Consider this. For over 140 years, ADT has helped stop more crime than any other home security system. Visit ADT.com to learn more. Look, there is a lot to get into in this game. There's a lot to break down specifically, and we will do that. But what, guys, have we always said about New England? If you're going to beat them, you're going to have to beat them.
Right.
They will not beat themselves. We talked about, keeping your foot on the gas pedal, stepping on their neck until they turn blue, sweeping the leg, go full Cobra Kai. Well, I don't know if anybody embodied that more for a 60-minute game than head coach Doug Peterson, going for it on fourth down and a couple of times like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
But he able to pay it off. And here was the Super Bowl winning coach on his aggressiveness.
I take it week by week, but, I trust my players. I trust the coaches, and, I trust my instincts. I trust everything that I'm doing. And, I want to maintain that aggressiveness with the guys. And, in games like this against a great opponent, you got to make those tough decisions that way and keep yourself aggressive.
And those two plays, I think, more than anything else, sort of just blew my mind. And the first one was obviously they were set up for easy points, field goal right before the half.
Yeah, they were.
They were set up. They were
right.
They were set. There it was.
Yes. Woo!
So they were set up. It was all there. In fact, I put out there, take the points. And then I was like, never mind.
Yeah.
Because that play was and we saw that play in the college football semifinals.
We saw it earlier. It was Ohio University, right? Yeah. That did it. In November, they ran that play, and then Baker Mayfield, Oklahoma, and he caught a touchdown pass against Clemson
against Georgia.
Against Georgia
in the semifinal.
In the semifinal game, exactly. Yep. So it's a great play. And I mean, it's one of those where I know a lot of people are like, who's supposed to cover the quarterback?
No one.
Well,
no one.
Well, you just.
Man,
well,
Super Bowl
it's
hangover
Monday after the
is
Super
real.
Bowl. Get over it. If my voice makes it through the show, it'll be a miracle.
A lot of people up late. No giving excuses for it. Just got to deal with it. The bottom line is you follow your rules. He's now a back. First back out. I mean, there are rules still in place to the quarterback. You're not covering the quarterback, covering first man out. So, but it seems to work every time because nobody pays any mind to the quarterback because of who it is. But just a great play call. That was aggressive. The one aggressive, maybe I know you and I agree. I haven't heard you, Mike. When you get the touchdown, you're up 15-3 with about 9 minutes to go in the half. You go for 2 there to try and make up for that point. I think that was a little early. You didn't really need to do it at that stage of the game.
Yeah, it seemed very premature, and that was another place where they want to push the gas on this stuff, so occasionally it's going to burn you. Occasionally you're going to find spots like that, and thankfully for them, they were just able to overcome that later on.
Yeah, I mean, my theory is never chase the point unless you need it.
Yeah.
Case in point, the way the game played out, had they just kicked the extra point there, once they kick the Jake Elliott field goal, they're up 9. It's over.
9. Yeah.
It's over. Now, look, you could say, well, they missed, but that's why you let it play out. Don't chase the point until you need it.
To the point you said before that, they're aggressive style.
Absolutely.
So you know what? It's just like that aggressive defense. If you get a guy jumping offside every now and then, you live with it because you get good plays. You live with things like that. I mean, that's just the way they play. So while I thought it wasn't the greatest call in the world, I understand that's their personality to be aggressive. So it's not like you can complain too much.
Well, no, nobody's complaining in Philadelphia.
No,
There's
they're not.
Question.
No, they're
Look,
not.
And there was that big play at the end of the first half, a 3rd and 3 at the Philadelphia 37. It looked like, oh my gosh, here we go. They're going to get the ball back. And guess what? After playing so great, Brady and company going to have the chance to either tie or take the lead with about a minute and a half to go. 3rd and 3. Swing pass to Clement goes for 55 yards. And that set up the play that we sort of began this discussion with, which is the 4th and goal from the 2, and it was the reverse and the play to Nick Foles that you said we saw a couple of times going up. Here was Nick Foles, the MVP of this game, talking about that play specifically.
That was something we've been working on, and Doug and I were talking. I was like, let's just run it. It was a good time. And the end was a little wider than I thought, so I was like, I really need to sell like I'm not doing anything. And it worked. Trey made an amazing throw right on the money. I just looked it in. And, I mean, we've repped it for a while, so I was excited to get it run and in the Super Bowl.
Couple of things there. The name of the play?
Philly Special.
How great is that? The
Philly
name of that
Special.
play was the Philly Special.
Yeah.
By the way, that's the look on Cliff's face as he's just glazed right now. He can barely function.
I believe
just
he
keep
has,
pumping Philadelphia songs.
I
baby.
believe he has hydraulic fluid on his body because that's what they use to try and grease the lamppost. That didn't work again. Again, it didn't work.
No,
it's
did
amazing.
Not. But I mean, that was part of just a theory, sort of a theme of what we saw from Doug Peterson. Again, we went for 2 when they were up 15-3. They went for it on the 4th and goal with 34 left. And how about going for it on 4th and 1 from their own 45 under 6 minutes to play?
Man, that was a very, very gutsy play. Yes,
but you know what? I guess his theory was, hey man, our defense hadn't stopped them all game.
Yeah.
So if they score, let's go ahead and if they score, that'll give us a chance maybe to try and run out the clock and get the 8-point play we need to win this game or send it into overtime, depending on the machinations of the score, which I can't remember at this point. But it was 33-32 at that point.
33-3. They were down 1. They could have punted. They could have buried New England a bit and then had their defense go for a stop. But they decided to go for it again. That's their aggressive style. And there was Zach Ertz again making the play.
Well, it was Zach Ertz. And how about this for an interesting note about Zach Ertz? We talked about both tight ends in this game. Really, I think the principal was receiving weapon for them in the playoffs. And in the 6.5 hours of pregame shows we had yesterday, I saw this note about Zach Ertz from the NFC Championship game. This courtesy of a former colleague of ours, Cynthia Freeland, over at the NFL Network now. Zach Ertz against Minnesota was 5-8 on 5 of his 8 targets against Minnesota came on 3rd down. 4 of those went for first down receptions. This game, 5 of his 9 targets came on 3rd down. 4 of those receptions went for first downs in this game. Overall in the playoffs, just now got this note, Zach Ertz from Nick Foles on 3rd or 4th down, 11 for 12. In this playoff run. So an unbelievable asset on those money downs when they needed it the most.
And not only that, because I think that was the one guy on offense that Bill Belichick was probably trying to stop. And Bill and his staff and Matt Patricia, the defensive coordinator, do a better job of anyone of taking away your number one threat. And Zach Ertz has been that number one threat, the most consistent threat, as you pointed out, for most of this regular and postseason.
And the reason I thought, and we ended up, Trey, you and I both picking the Eagles is that
we're just smarter.
When New England tries to do that, you have to adjust. we felt, I know both of us did, that the Eagles had enough weapons to go to. It was Jeffrey early in the game, then Clement out of the backfield. It was obviously Zach Ertz as well, but Aguilar, 9 catches. He led the way with 9 catches, so they had enough weapons in other areas to overcome if you were to try and take one guy out of it. So, and I know Brady had all the yards, and I know Brady had the touchdowns, the 2 for over 500 yards. I think Nick Foles outplayed him.
Well,
I think Nick Foles outplayed Brady.
Look, at the end of the day, they won the game, and he made a couple of throws to absolutely do it. I mean, it's hard for me to say, well, Brady didn't play well when he threw for 500 yards and 3 touchdowns.
And I'm not saying that at all. Brady's the GOAT. I get that. But just in this game, I thought Brady, a ton of yards. I thought Brady, there was a ton of open receivers. I mean, they were figuring out the coverages by sending guys in motion, seeing who was going in motion. He knew it was man. He knew where he was going. In zone at time, they were getting destroyed. There was a ton of open receivers for Brady. He got a lot of yards, but he's a fantastic quarterback. But the way Foles was threading the needle and dropping the ball in this game, to me, I just thought if you're going to tell me did one outplay the other, even with all those yards, I would say yes, Foles did.
Yeah, I mean, this is Tom Brady again, kind of losing out to his own greatness on this one. When the standard is that high, we're going to look for any little spot of where it could have gone wrong.
Hard for me to blame him when it's 500 yards passing.
I agree with that. There's no blame on him.
By the way, if there was ever a chance or a case for being a coach for the MVP, it might have been Doug Peterson this game. He was great.
Golic and Wingo, the podcast.
Mm-hmm. Trey Wingo and Mike Golic Sr. That's Will and DJ Jazzy Jeff. A little Philadelphia summertime there. As Cliff, you play them all, baby. You celebrate the entire collection today, baby.
Empty the tank.
You unload the vault. As once again the call on WIP and Mel Reese on the touchdown that was, and it might have been the NFL's worst nightmare.
Yeah.
It's time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. Golic and Wingo on ESPN Radio and ESPN2, presented by Progressive Insurance. All phone guests join us via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. And Mike, in the year of what might have looked like the finally tipping point of what the hell is a catch and what the hell isn't a catch, this had to be the NFL's worst nightmare as they were looking at it, thinking, oh, my God, are we going to have to maybe overturn a game-winning touchdown in the Super Bowl?
I thought, there were 2 calls, as we know, Corey Clement with one and Zach Ertz with the other. To me, I'd say start with the Zach Ertz. To me, that was the easy one. Zach Ertz, everybody compared it to Jesse James because we just saw it not too long ago with Jesse James making the catch, the tight end for the Pittsburgh Steelers by the end zone and diving in. Zach Ertz caught the ball, took at least 2 steps. So he became when he took the 2 steps, all you had to think of then was that running back diving over the top on a 1-yard run and putting the ball over the goal line, and that's end of story. It's a touchdown. As soon as Zach Ertz took those couple of steps, he became that runner. He took the ball crossed the end zone line, so it did not matter what happened after that. We don't even have to get into what happened after that. That is exactly was the ruling on that. Mike, I thought it was at that one I thought was the easier one of the 2.
It was, and you're right. What a narrow escape for the NFL in this. On their biggest stage, the last thing you want to do is have a rehashing of the controversy that got you there, as we now see the tweet from Jesse James, the Steelers tight end. Immediately after it happened, Zach Ertz caught it.
Yeah, it was. So at least one tight end in the state of Pennsylvania got the call right. However, you said it was easy. This review took a long time.
It did.
And I think they were looking at 2 things. Number one, did he survive the ground? But I think then they realized that I think that was the initial read they were going to look at, but I think then they said, I think he had gained possession.
He was
as
a runner.
Right. So by the way, I think either way, I thought it would have held up because I absolutely believe, I think he took 3 steps and then he dove.
Yeah.
So that to me clearly establishes that he's a runner. But even if he was not a runner for somehow deemed in the eyes of the NFL, that ball, he had it. His hand was still underneath it when it moved. It popped up in the air, and he caught it again. So again, why was Des Bryant's catch not a catch in the 2014 divisional
But it didn't even get to that. It didn't even get to that part of it.
You're exactly
he was a
right.
runner. It crossed the line, so forget anything that happened after it as far as did the ball hit the ground or not. It does not matter, and I absolutely think they got it right. The Corey Clement one was a little bit different. What a great pass by Nick Foles, threading the needle on that play to Clement, try to the back of the end zone. Clement absolutely had possession, took 2 steps, but then the ball kind of moved, And so if you reestablish the catch, then a foot went out of bounds. So it was like, okay, did he have possession of that? He had the 2 steps in, but then the ball kind of moved a little bit. So what's the rule? If it didn't move enough, does it move a little? How much does it have to? That's where the NFL really needs to decide what's going on. Because how about after that play, Chris Collinsworth, he was like, I give up. Because Chris Collinsworth,
he spoke for America.
He did. He goes, I thought that was going to be called incomplete because it looked like a little bit of a bobble, and then the foot went out of bounds. So it's like he didn't have control the second time of it in bounds. So he gave up on that. That was a little more close. I still thought it was a touchdown, but man, I certainly agree that was more of the controversial one.
Well, here's what Dean Blandino tweeted about it. To your point, Mike, and I think it makes it a little more uncertain. Issue is control. Looks like he had it initially and gets both feet down in bounds. There's some movement of the ball, but don't think enough to say loss of control. Call should stand. See, it's this interpretation that I think a lot of people have problems with. The way it has been called all year, Junior, from what we've seen, I thought for sure that one was going to be overturned, and lo and behold, it wasn't.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those situations, is it too late to call it the way we all want to see? Because what's the cry been this year? We would like basically common sense catch laws in this, where if it looks like a catch for most of us, then it can be ruled a catch. And when you look for what the NFL wanted in this game, you wanted to play a clean game with this kind of stuff. And that usually means err more on the side of call fewer penalties, which we saw last night. And in this instance, more often than not, it should be a catch, especially in scoring plays like that. If it can go one way or the other, usually we would side on the catch. And the instances where the NFL's got in trouble is where they've ruled away from that.
Well, and to that point, both of those plays were called touchdowns on the field, right? But then again, so was Jesse James in the game against the Steelers.
It was.
I mean, look, I think they got one of them right, and by everything that we've seen this year, I cannot explain why the other one wasn't called incomplete.
And that's exactly what Chris Collinsworth said. Exactly. He said, not so much that whether we thought it was a touchdown or not, but by the way it's been called throughout the year of control. Because I agree. I thought he took 2 steps in the end zone with control, but then the ball did move some. So does that mean, okay, now you've reestablished possession again, and now you need to get 2 feet down again? I mean, and that's the thing that
the hand came off the ball.
I know. They have to decide this in the end. They have to get more specific with this, but it turns out the refs got them both right as far as making the call on the field and then them standing.
I'll be interested, because I think what we need to decide is what we want, because more specific has gotten us to all of the problematic places that we wanted. When you add up a lot of those specifics, it makes it difficult at times to account for a situation where if you have a general understanding of what you're looking for, that's the decision I think the NFL has to make this offseason.
Well, and remember when we had Panthers tight end Greg Olsen with us on the show when we were in Minneapolis, Mike, he said don't change the rule. Remember, he said keep it the way it is.
Right.
I think it just needs to be pared down to whenever you fight.
Made simpler?
Yes. Whenever we put up the rule on TV, it takes up 2 full pages. Yeah. Okay. That tells me there's too much there.
Yeah.
There's weight. It has to be pared down. And look, Roger, when he was on with us last week, NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell, he admitted they're going to take a look at that. They're going to simplify it because he was upset not with the way it was implemented, but the rule they were given the refs to interpret. But can you imagine, had that been overturned, how much of a PR nightmare would that have been for the NFL on a potential game-winning touchdown?
Horrific.
In the last 2.5 minutes of the Super
You
Bowl.
want to talk about anybody associated with the NFL, the headache they had when they saw that and thought, oh my God, here we go again on this.
I think the NFL really dodged 2 bullets in that regard, and both of them were saved by really the same thing, which was establishing as a runner. Because we forget, Brandon Cooks got knocked out of this game very early on a play that was a helmet-to-helmet hit, but it was deemed a legal helmet-to-helmet hit because he had established himself as a runner. He was no longer under that protection of defenseless receiver, and that was a play where we've seen the concussion protocol botched enough times this year to the detriment of the NFL that had to be another moment where they held their collective breaths until we realized, all right, he had been established as a runner. It's an unfortunate byproduct. You hate to see a guy hurt, and he got hit very hard, but he got up, they followed the concussion protocol, and he didn't re-enter the game. And while it was a detriment for the Patriots, it's a win for the way that process is supposed to work and the rule book in that, because it wasn't something that drew a flag. It's not something that's going to draw like a fine or suspension coming off of it, but another big hold your breath moment for the league office.
Yep, well, you saw the replay of Robert Kraft and Jonathan Kraft in the Patriot suite, and he kept tapping to his head. And yes, there was helmet-to-helmet collision. However, to your point, it was correct. He clearly had established himself as a runner, and in the field of play, that defenseless receiver helper, helmet to helmet, does not matter. So, look, Gene Steratore in his first Super Bowl had a lot to handle on his plate, and I thought he and his crew did a really, really good job.
I do as well, except there it was again. Didn't we just come off a game where there were 6 penalties against one team and 1 against the Patriots? Yeah. It was the exact same thing here again. 6 penalties against the Eagles, just 1 against New England. I thought there was a blatant PI missed against New England in the end zone on a play where you started to go.
On the 2-point conversion,
you started to go,
right?
Are they not? Because I thought it was a little spotty on some. So if New England had somehow pulled out this game, that would have been the focus of a lot of people's ire again.
I hear you on that, but I'm not a big fan of situational ethics. I mean, I hate that. Okay, if it's a penalty in the first quarter, it should be a penalty in the fourth quarter. But I'm also a fan of, some contact is allowed.
I agree with that.
A fingernail touched me, then my God, the whole thing should be wiped out.
Golic and Wingo, the podcast.
What a day, what a show, what a time.
I tell you what, a great sports night last night. Yeah. No doubt about it.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome in to the Monday after the Super Bowl on Golic and Wingo on ESPN Radio and ESPN2. We are presented by Progressive Insurance. All phone guests join us via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. We are excited to let you know that coming up a little bit later this hour, safety of the Philadelphia Eagles, Malcolm Jenkins, will join us. Boy, he really set the tone in the first half with some big hits and some big plays, and then, of course, the defense kind of took the both teams took it off in the second half.
It really, really did.
But it was one of the more entertaining Super Bowls of all time. There's lots to get into. We'll get into that. We have a poll question up there, which is really interesting, which is which player is least likely to be back with their team next year? Is it Bill Belichick, the coach, Tom Brady, Nick Foles, or Rob Gronkowski?
This was the new one after last night, so go ahead and explain this one.
So after the game, by the way, Gronk had 1 catch for 9 yards in the first half. The first 4 plays of the second half, Brady threw it right at him. He was targeted 4 times, caught 3 of them, and he missed them on a wide open seam route early. But clearly the indication from Bill Belichick at halftime was, get the big guy involved.
Yeah, they see that large human being, throw him the ball.
See that dancing bear that was put together in a lab somewhere?
How about it?
Go get him. And after the game, this was Rob talking about whether or not he was going to retire after this season.
I'm definitely going to look at my future, for sure. I'm going to sit down the next couple of weeks and see where I'm at.
Rob, what would make you retire?
I'm not ready for these type of questions right now. I mean, I'm just going to sit down, reflect on the season, probably talk to my teammates. We fought all year long, all the receivers, running backs, linemen. I mean, we put all the work in together. So I'm just going to reflect on the season, proud of the boys, and just see what happens.
So that was the sound of him about retirement, but it was something he said before that caught your eye and your ear.
I was listening to it in the press conferences live after the game, and a reporter came up to him and said, Gronk, what can you tell us about this discussion you had with some of your teammates about possibly retiring after this year? And the first thing Gronk said is, how did you hear about that?
Yeah.
Now, when I heard that to me is much more compelling and interesting than, I'm gonna think about everything. Clearly, this was something that he had discussed with some people inside that Patriots organization, be it teammates, support staff, coaches, or whatever, that he thought was a very much in private conversation.
Right.
And then the look on his face, he turned and looked at that guy and said, how did you hear about that? So that, to me, leads a little more credence into this. Now, I'll believe you. I followed this mantra from you for years.
Right.
Remember when Brett Favre retired?
Yes.
And you said to me after that whole thing, never listen to a guy with what he says the first few weeks after a season's over, because you're just spent emotionally, physically drained, you're beat up, you're not in a mindset where you can think about, okay, let's gear up and do this again. But I thought when you put in context that first, how did you hear about that? In other words, I was absolutely talking about that with someone before this game. Does that change the context for you at all?
Not a ton, but it certainly raises an eyebrow. And I don't think there's any doubt, based off some of the injuries he's had and then a concussion 2 weeks ago.
Big one.
And you heard, I believe it was Rodney Harrison in pregame talking about how Gronk had kind of changed this season. He wasn't going to be drinking or partying during the season. He had gotten on some of the TB12 nutrition thing going on and tried to take care of his body a little bit better. And certainly he got nicked up some, but with a concussion for sure. I think that may have added to it. We know the amount of surgeries he's had, especially on his back. And then that concussion, that stung him pretty good, no doubt about it. So maybe it was in his mind. But let me tell you, so I'll give you a little bit on that, yes. But anything anybody gets asked right after the Super Bowl about their future, man, do I put away. I just put away and say, you got to give that time, let that wear off a little bit to see where it goes. But that's why we put Gronk in the poll, because of his answer to that and just what you had said about how did you hear about that there was some discussion. So that's why, again, who is least likely to be with their team next year? Belichick, Brady, Gronk, or Nick Foles?
Well, it's interesting, too, because, Gronk is an interesting study. I mean, we all look at him. Oh, look at that big, dumb party animal. That's really not who he is. let me be clear.
Yeah.
He goes hard and he enjoys it.
Yes.
I'm not saying that at all, but he doesn't spend a dime of his NFL money. He has lived, as long as he's played in the NFL, he's lived off his endorsements.
Right.
He has banked all that cash. He's won the good guy award for the Patriots, I think, a couple of times for all the hard work he does that we don't see and we don't talk about. He spends off days at hospitals dealing with sick children. He does all of those things. So you may look at him, and I call him the dancing bear that was put together in a lab, but he has a plan. And I think he's really thinking about that plan going forward in terms of, hey, man, I'm only 29. I've got all this money in the bank. I want to make sure that when it's all said and done, I got a life after my career is over.
So that one was a little surprising. Not surprising at all that the 40-year-old Tom Brady was asked after the game about his future as well.
And again, what makes Gronk's answer interesting right after the game is listen how Tom Brady addressed that issue when he will be 41 going into next season.
I expect to be back, so we'll see. It's 15 minutes after the game ended, so I'd like to process this a little bit, and I wouldn't see why I wouldn't be back.
So just the difference in those two answers, all right? And your point is well taken, and we talked about it a million times. Peyton Manning, we all knew he was going to retire, but he didn't get there till March. So it takes some people to get there. But just in the way that Brady answered that question and diffused it for the most part right away, as opposed to Gronk's, how did you hear about that?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about everything. That's a pretty big dichotomy between those two answers.
I agree. And listen, the only way Brady, and we heard it before when the Krafts have basically said Tom Brady has earned the right to retire when he wants. So if Brady wants to play, he's going to be back and it's going to be with the Patriots. If either one of the Brady or Belichick was going to be gone, it was going to be Belichick by getting traded somewhere. I don't think that's going to happen. Gronk, now that you threw that into the fray. So then that brings up our other choice there, Nick Foles.
Yep.
Nick Foles has another year in his contract, so if he's going anywhere, it's going to be because Philadelphia gets offered a deal that they can't refuse. Everybody has a price. Will some team now match the price again? Remember, the greatest conversation that saved this season and put Nick Foles in the category of Jeff Hostetler and Doug Williams as quarterbacks making 3 or fewer regular season starts and winning the Super Bowl was a conversation Jeffrey Lurie, the owner, and Howie Roseman, the GM, had before the season saying, is $12 million, do we spend that on the backup quarterback, or can we use that money somewhere else? And they obviously made the right decision in spending it on Foles. Now, do other teams come knocking? What do they offer? And trade as Nick Foles end up getting traded by the Eagles?
Well, listen, why... I understand the speculation because he played great. And again, he's on a short list that has Brady, Montana, and a few other quarterbacks as back-to-back 350-yard passing games in playoff games in NFL history. But at the end of the day, Carson Wentz tore up that knee in late November. And what do we always say about an ACL, unless you're Adrian Peterson and you're not human? It takes a year. Even when RG3, who tore it up in the playoff game against the Seahawks, tried to come back for the start of 2013, he wasn't ready. He wasn't right. So if you're the Eagles, you have the ultimate security blanket in Nick Foles.
I agree with that.
And look, you're right. Everybody has a price.
Yep.
That price would have to be so freaking over the top for me. Look, in this system, and that is the biggest part of this. In this system, it works for Nick Foles. When he was thinking about not playing football at all after a couple of bad years, he said he wanted to go back only because he wanted to work with Andy Reid. Well, who was Andy Reid's disciple? Doug Peterson. Doug Peterson was on Andy Reid's staff in Kansas City, and that's where these people all got to back and work together. The reason Nick Foles wanted to come back was because it wasn't Andy Reid, but it was Doug Peterson, and Doug Peterson had Andy Reid's system. This system is perfect for Nick Foles. When Carson Wentz is healthy, he's good. Let's just dispel that right now. There is no quarterback.
No. There
is not going to happen.
No.
But why would you, if you're the Eagles, seeing how valuable this guy is as a backup quarterback, especially in the system you have and in a place where he's very comfortable, I mean, the price that you'd even have to think about it would be astronomical to think about trading him away.
And yet, there's a price out there. There's a price out there because you'll always answer the phone. You'll always listen. And it is a quarter with free agency and the draft. And we already saw Alex Smith get traded. And what that trade went for. This is a Super Bowl winning quarterback who played well, certainly well in the postseason, and now is available. I understand what you're saying, and I'm with you. You have no idea how Carson Wentz is coming back from it. Carson Wentz is your starting quarterback. You don't know how he's coming back from it. Foles is 7.6 against the cap next year.
Which is such a manageable number.
Nothing. So obviously if he got traded somewhere else, he would certainly want to do an extension and all that, but he can get traded somebody else. The price would have to be a very high. And you know what? It might be. There may be some team out there that says, we're going to buy into that. We think we're getting close right now, and if we can get a guy who has this ability, then we think we can now. That's taking chances. We'll see, because you said with systems and such, because at one point we had always said any quarterback that did well in New England outside of Tom Brady that showed a little bit and then all of a sudden went somewhere else and got a lot of money, never really panned out. There's no quarterback that left New England that has a better than 500 record. Now, Jimmy Garoppolo may go past that because he's played well, but certainly when Matt Castle left and any of the other guys like a Brian Hoyer went somewhere and such, so it's never really panned out. So you're taking a chance because, you look at Nick Foles after his 27 touchdowns and 2 interception season, then it was 13-10, 7 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, when he was playing for Philly that's a year after and then St. Louis. So it wasn't always this wow stuff. No. So what would somebody be willing to trade for him, and what's the price where Philadelphia would say yes?
Well, the reason why I'm inclined to say that they won't is because of the point you brought up at the beginning of this conversation. People are like, really? Are you investing that much money in your backup?
Yep.
I think they invested. If that's the way you approach this season, and it played out that you needed him, and it's a pretty cap friendly deal. I mean, I look, knowing that you got a guy coming off the ACL, knowing what you have in this guy, knowing that you were willing to invest in him when you didn't know how good he was going to be on this current Philadelphia team, it would just seem to me, if I'm Howie Roseman, who by the way was the executive of the year. Yeah. In the NFL, and Doug Peterson, who clearly now has some sway with some things he might want to say about, let's keep these guys, let's let these guys go. I would be hard-pressed to say, yeah, they'd be willing to let him go for the right price when they know what a commodity he is.
Agreed. What's the price?
What?
Because you know it's there.
Jimmy was a second.
Right. Yeah. But as Nick was playing, how much did the trade value change as he was going up and up and up the poll and what he was doing, and now he's a Super Bowl MVP.
Well, he's a Super Bowl MVP. You know who else is a Super Bowl winner? That would be the safety of the Philadelphia Eagles, Malcolm Jenkins, and he joins us now on Golic and Wingo. Malcolm, first of all, congratulations. I know your emotion meter is probably at 0 at this point, but can you put into words what it was like when you realized we actually did it?
Man, that last play, they threw that ball up, and it kind of got bounced around a little bit, but when it hit the ground, I think you can see all of the defenders kind of pause for a second, had to kind of look up at the clock and realize, we had just become world champions. In the season that we just finished out, the way it started, the amount of things we've had to fight through, the amount of trust that we've had to have in each other throughout the year, it's just an amazing feeling.
And to take people there, Malcolm, that last play, like you said, everybody sees the 6'6" Gronk with the ball going up and while he's the closest receiver. And then the convergence of defensive players on the ball was incredible. But just take us through that play when the ball's in the air for those of us that will never be in that position.
Yeah, I mean, for us, we've talked about these type of situations all year, and rarely do you come across them, and especially with this much on the line. But with that ball in the air, it's just like everything's in slow motion. You obviously see Gronk. Everybody goes for the ball, and when the ball doesn't immediately hit the ground, like your heart drops. You're just hoping nobody catches the tip, and it hits the ground. And everything just catches back up to speed, and it just all sets in that we just did it. You know, we just finished and put the exclamation point on the entire season. We're world champions, and now the countdown is for us to get back to Philly as fast as possible and join the celebration.
Malcolm Jenkins with us here after a Super Bowl win over the New England Patriots. I got to say, watching that play, the first thing I thought of was that scrum play against the Falcons last year where somehow Julian Edelman came up with that catch. I was like, oh, my gosh, are they going to do it again? But they didn't. They didn't, Malcolm. You guys won it.
They did it.
Just so people understand, take us through what your life has been from the game to doing this interview right now, because I don't think a lot of people understand that you are probably completely sleep-deprived. I could tell you a million things, and your brain would probably believe it just because the disconnect between body and soul is probably pretty crazy right now.
Yeah, we hadn't been asleep yet. We obviously had the celebration on the field right after the game. That took, a while. We got in the locker room and partied some more.
Yeah,
we left the locker room and immediately went to the after party. And then just got back to the hotel maybe an hour ago. And we probably won't go to sleep until we get on this plane, or probably until tomorrow. So we're on cloud nine right now, man. Like I said, everything, we're just trying to get back to Philly as fast as possible. We know that they are partying like never before, and we are trying to get back to that.
Super Bowl champion Malcolm Jenkins, Eagle safety, joining us on Golic and Wingo, and that's got to be a nice ring to it to hear the Super Bowl champion part. So in this game, it took all the way until that 33-32, 9 minutes to go in the game, when all of a sudden New England got the lead. So take us now to the mentality of you guys held the lead, and this was a game where both defenses we know gave up a lot of yards, and now New England takes the lead. So what was the talk on the sideline?
Well, the biggest thing is, our offense was rolling, and we didn't expect them to slow down. They took the lead when New England's defense actually got a stop, and our defense was talking the entire second half, like, we just need one stop. One stop would win us the game, and we didn't get that stop until the end. And when our offense took the lead late in the game, we realized that was our time, that we were going to be on the field for our entire team and our entire season. And nobody doubted anything. Nobody batted an eye. We didn't have to have a big huddle or rallying point. Everybody understood what the time was and what needed to be done. And we stepped up. We knew that play was going to come, and somebody was going to be the hero. Somebody was going to go down in history. And that player just happened to be Brandon Graham and Derek Barnett scooping up that fumble. And that was the play we needed, the one stop that we needed on defense to get us a world championship. And what we wouldn't write the script any better.
Well, look, man, Malcolm Jenkins with us. Don't sell yourself short, man. Let's just make people understand about you. You started your career in New Orleans, a team that had never won anything in their 42 years, and then you guys upset Peyton Manning and the Indianapolis Colts in Super Bowl 44 to take them down 31-17. And now you end a 56-year drought with the Philadelphia Eagles. So you can talk about everybody else, but it's pretty clear, Malcolm Jenkins, you're the reason the Eagles won the game. I mean, that's obvious.
I'm starting to see a little trend there.
There it is.
But,
there it is.
I mean, it's one of those things. I've been blessed to be a part of some amazing teams. That team in New Orleans, to bring that Super Bowl to that city when it had never even been to the Super Bowl was amazing. My first year in the league, but this one is something special. To be able to be a leader on this team, to be a key contributor in all the things that we've went through this year. To bring it back to the city of Philadelphia is something special. When I came here, all I could ever think about was what this parade would look like when we won this Super Bowl, and I'm so excited to take part in that.
Again, Malcolm Jenkins joining us, Eagles safety, Super Bowl champion. And on a personal note, most of my career was with the Eagles, and I of a 9-year career, 6 were there, and we never got to the Super Bowl. So I can't tell you how happy I am for you guys to get there. Just like what you said, for those fans, because those fans are fantastic. And also another feeling I never felt in 9 years was the clock hitting 0 and just the emotion that you would have with your teammates. I try and explain all the time that you spend so much time with your teammates throughout the season. If you could take us on the field and in the locker room and just how it was with you and your teammates when you got the ultimate goal in team sports.
Man, I probably broke down about 5 times on the field. It's just when that clock hits 0 and that confetti is in the air and you just take the time to soak in the environment and you realize that all that you've sacrificed, all that you've put in for an entire year, it's been worth it. And you've reached the mountaintop. That mountaintop experience is like nothing else that you can find. And then to get in that locker room and to just celebrate with everybody, from the equipment managers to the practice squad players, to coaches, players, it's an amazing feeling. And it's one that every team in this league scratches and scrapes for to get to. And only one team gets to enjoy that at the end of the year. And we are blessed and grateful to be able to be that team to celebrate that at the end of the year.
Well, look, man, go celebrate it, because we're looking at pictures in Philadelphia of people doing backflips off the awning of the Ritz-Carlton Hotel. They are clearly ready to see you guys and enjoy yourself. Malcolm, I know you're a little sleep-deprived right now, but congratulations.
Yes,
enjoy
absolutely.
it. What a special moment. And every dog has their day. And the dogs in Philadelphia came through one of the biggest upsets in Super Bowl history.
Congrats, man.
Thank you.
Golic and Wingo, the podcast.
It was all sort of one big giant Jell-O mold.
It's very interesting where that went.
Delighted to be joined now in studio by our NFL analyst Tim Hasselbeck, who joins us, giving us the Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. Timmy, Mike and I were having this discussion. There's a lot to get into here. I thought that Nick Foles played great, 373 yards, 3 touchdowns. Tom Brady threw for 505 yards. Who do you think the better quarterback on the field was Sunday?
Well, let me. I heard you guys talk about this. Let me first say, it's like what do you like better, 77 in sunny or 78 in sunny? Like,
it's always sunny in Philadelphia. It's always sunny in Philadelphia this morning.
You're so true, Timmy, because people think the person you don't pick, you think played horribly. You take either one of these performances in a heartbeat.
Yeah. And not taking into consideration like the context of who they are. You're saying that just nameless jerseys, which guy? I would say Brady, actually.
Yeah.
Because
win for me.
Well, listen, I look at it. I mean, they called, nearly 50 passes.
Right.
No turnovers. I think there's a reason it had never been done before. You know what I mean?
Right.
It was nearly impossible what he was able to do, and he did it without his best wide receiver, who gets knocked out of the game with a concussion.
Both threw, or Brady threw 43 passes, Foles threw, or 48, Foles threw 43, both completed 28, Foles 68% or 65, and Brady 58. My thought on why I thought Foles played better, and again, they both played great, is I thought he threaded the needle a little better at times, because some of those passes, Brady is great, but man, were you watching at times going, how are these guys so wide open on some of these routes?
Well, you take the Brandon Cooks play where he got injured. I mean, he was wide open. A couple times Amendola popped free, but, and I would say that maybe the best throw of the night was the throw to Corey Clement, the touchdown that stood.
Right.
Did you think it should have stood?
Well, let me explain it this way. Did I think it was a catch? Yes. Did the NFL rule that a touchdown catch all season long when they replayed it? No, they didn't. So I was surprised that stood. But look, Brady made some contested throws as well. The touchdown pass to Gronk is an outstanding. The second one is an outstanding throw. And then, and really even the touchdown pass to Hogan, he's kind of wide open.
Yeah.
Because there was a little bit of confusion and Brady does such a good job of moving the safety that's how, Hogan was so wide open. But look, to me, I heard some people kind of, rumbling, hey, this is bad defense. And I will say this, there were a couple times that there was some tackling that wasn't great, and there was very little pressure generated on the quarterbacks.
Agreed.
But I thought it was an outstanding job by the play callers and the quarterbacks. So I can't sit there and just say, hey, this was bad defense. I thought it was really good quarterback play and good play calling.
As a former defensive player, I was a little disappointed in the lack of pressure.
Yeah.
Especially by Philadelphia. I think before the one sack, I think it was New England that was actually getting more pressure on Foles than Philly was getting on Brady. But I'm with you, and I think one of the keys we had talked about was stay aggressive. And the play calling by Philly was doing exactly that. And why I thought Trey and I both picked Philly, one of the reasons is New England can try and take your guys, certain guys out, but Philly has just an array of places to go, and that's exactly what they did.
I said last night that I thought Doug Peterson should have been the MVP of the game.
I agree with you.
Thank you.
We spent way too much time together on NFL Live. Look, if you think about what he did, in all seriousness, from Malcolm Butler, or it's not Malcolm Butler, Jenkins.
Definitely not Malcolm Butler yesterday.
Malcolm Jenkins on James White. That was a surprise, and he did a tremendous job on him. So that was kind of a move on the defensive side of the ball, and I'm sure Jim Schwartz deserves some credit for that as well. But then you look at everyone's thinking either take the points, or if you're going to go for it, you're really going to let your backup tight end throw a pass on 4th and 1 in that situation. So you go and you do that. 3rd and 1, it's a hard play action fake shot play to Zach Ertz. Then 4th down with just inside 6 minutes left.
How about that play?
All 3 of your timeouts and almost no hesitation. Hey, we're going for it here. I thought his aggressiveness in terms of how he called that game really was the reason they won it. How many coaches have we seen not be able to do it? They talk about wanting to be aggressive, but not actually being able to do it.
I thought that was a classic try and get him to jump and get the first down and then punt the ball. And
he was all in.
And he was pressured on that play as well. He threw that pass back and away. At one point, it was James Harrison, the 39-year-old, getting pressure almost every play.
Look, we talk about it all the time. We saw it with Jacksonville. We saw it with Atlanta last year in the Super Bowl. Be aggressive. The Patriots are not going to beat themselves. But, by the way, the fact that it almost came down to an alley-oop at the end of the game shows how brilliant Brady is. It was a 4th and 10 from their own 5-yard line, and somehow they convert that to keep the drive alive. Yep. Look, just so people understand, and the reason why I talked about Brady, I thought he might have been the better quarterback on the field. Before last year's Super Bowl, okay, the quarterback with the most passing yards in a Super Bowl was Kurt Warner. And the last 2 years, Tom Brady's known for 505 and 466. So in a 2-year span, he's taken 2 of those top 3 away from Kurt Warner. Look, he's on another level sometimes in these games. But the aggressiveness I thought you talked about was the whole thing. I on one level I understood that 4th and 1 call or 4th and 2, whatever it was, because he was like, look, we're not stopping them. So if we give him the short field, maybe I'll have enough time to go down and get the 8-point play that we need to either win this thing or send it into overtime, depending on what they did with the extra point. So we always talk about it, but nobody does it. And Doug Peterson did it.
Well, he did it. And it was clear that the message to his quarterback came through too. His quarterback knew to stay aggressive. Right. And so, that was obvious. One thing on that alley-oop, as you called it, at the end of the game, that Hail Mary there, look at it again. New England has a chance if they have better spacing.
You're not kidding.
Amendola and Dorsett are right next to each other, and I'm sure it wasn't Dorsett that practiced it because Cooks was probably in there.
Right.
But their spacing is awful. They're standing right next to each other. You really have a point man. You have somebody facing the goal line. You have somebody kind of as a deflector, and then you have someone running the end line.
Yep.
And you have 2 guys standing in the same spot. If they're on either side of Gronk, they have a shot to make that play.
Golic and Wingo, the podcast.
Let's not expect too much. There's only one person out there that's expecting way too much out of this guy too early. We know who that is. It's his father.
All right, we continue on Golic and Wingo. Trey Wingo, Mike Golic, Tim Hasselback in studio with us on ESPN Radio and ESPN2. The sound you heard in that rejoin, as we like to call it in the radio biz, was was Patriots cornerback. He may be the Falcons next year, who knows?
Yeah.
Patriots cornerback Malcolm Butler, who did not play a defensive snap. He played on special teams, but he did not play a single snap on the defensive side in terms of when the Patriots defense was on the ball. And why was that surprising? He played in 97.8% of the defensive snaps in the regular season. Timmy, he arrived at Super Bowl 52 one day after the team on Tuesday because he said he had an illness that kept him in the hospital with Malcolm Butler there. So defensive coordinator Matt Patricia said he was healthy. They just went with matchups. Bill Belichick said he did a good job of staying in tune the whole time, but you could see from the start that he was emotional at the national anthem.
Yes.
He knew he wasn't going to play in that game.
Yeah, you got that sense looking at, sometimes when you see guys crying during the anthem, you don't know what it is.
Exactly.
If it's just the emotions, the excitement of being in the game. And, but yeah, it's shocking. And look, I could understand him maybe not getting the start because they thought they had some bigger corners that maybe were a better matchup with Alshon Jeffrey. Eric Rowe is actually a bigger guy. Batamosi's a bigger guy. And so I think you could say, Alshon Jeffrey's not a burner. He's a big physical guy, and so we'd rather body him up. So I could see him maybe not getting the start, but not stepping on the field, I think was certainly surprising for me. I don't know that it changes the outcome of the game. I understand the guy's disappointment, but it's surprising. It's probably shocking.
Absolutely surprised on that. His one play was the lone punt in the game by Philadelphia in the second quarter. So you wonder if more will come out on a reason for it. Again, as you mentioned, late a day to the Super Bowl because sick and in the hospital. But is there more to that? Both Bill Belichick, when he was asked at halftime, not on camera, but said basically it's the game plan. We're going with who we think. His stock answer, people on the field are the ones we think we're going to win with, and the size thing came into play with Matt Patricia talking about it. They were in their big nickel package, as they called it, with the 3 safeties and 2 corners. He's an unrestricted free agent, so I got to believe there's no shot that he's going to be back with his team next year. To your point, exactly, you may not start him, but to not play him at all? Well, one special team play was surprising.
Yeah, that's surprising just because you're going to play a number of different packages.
Yes,
you're going to tell me that there was no package that he ends up getting on the field. And look, I'll say this. I know, I think it was Ryan Clarkson that we heard saying he thinks it was difference in the game, but it's not like Rowe played poorly, Right. I mean, and so makes a play on a 2-point conversion try where they're trying to get Jeffrey. He gets beat on the one jump ball for a touchdown, but that could have happened on Stephon Gilmore or Malcolm Butler.
And Duron Harmon, actually, who was playing for him, got the interception on the rebound off Alshon Jeffrey, and when it looked like the Eagles were going to put up even more points in the first half there. It is interesting, though, Tim, and we talked about this a little earlier, and we sort of alluded to it with you in the break here. The way Gronk answered that question, about the retirement thing, it leads you to a lot of speculation about what's happening there.
Yeah, and I think some people look at Gronk and they're like, "Oh, hey, look at this meathead. He just loves, playing football and spiking the football after he scores and kind of doing his thing." And Mike, you can speak to this as as somebody that plays, or played a position where you hit every snap.
Yeah,
like it's playing quarterback till you're 40. Is very, it is a lot different than a guy, playing nearly a decade at tight end. Look at, Gronk is coming off a concussion. He's asked to block a lot. He gets banged around quite a bit. He exposes himself and he's had serious injuries because of how he plays the game. He's great and he could continue to play for a number of years more at a very high level. But that position takes a pounding and he probably feels terrible. Like he looks amazing running around the field and making some of the plays he makes, but he probably he plays basically with like a robotic arm, because of all the injuries he had to his forearm. I think you have to pay attention, and I think you're right in terms of just the reaction to the question. Like, hey, how'd you know I was talking about that?
I think more and more players think about their mortality in the game, maybe in today, and I was just trying to go listen. Receivers, backs, guys that are going to get the ball, they're going to take hard hits. Mm-hmm. I don't know if there's a bigger target than Gronk, knowing that he's going to get his knees taken out, and not on cheap shots, but players are going to be like, where the hell am I going to hit him?
Yeah.
So you're going to try, or a high shot that catches him in the head, or a knee shot that takes him out, just out of survival, not on, I'm trying to hurt this guy. So I'm with you. I mean, I think he may be a guy, we have a lot of fun with him, and this guy enjoys the game and enjoys life, but his body has gotten beat up an awful lot, and he knows exactly the shots he's going to take. I don't think he's going to retire, but I can understand in the game today of where you have to hit him and his concerns about, more injuries.
Yeah, Timmy, in the 30 seconds we have left, we put that out there on Twitter, on our Twitter feed because of that question. Who do you think's least likely to be back with the team? Is it Nick Foles in Philadelphia? Is it Bill Belichick? Is it Tom Brady? Or is it Rob Gronkowski?
I think it would be Gronk. Look,
wow,
you don't
really?
know what he was just going through. He had a concussion. Took him a while to get out of the protocol. You don't know what it was like for him getting out of that protocol.
Right.
It could have been a brutal 10 days for Gronk, after the championship game.
Timmy, we appreciate it as
Thanks,
always.
man.
And the thing there that's really interesting, it was Gronk that turned that whole game around in the second half. He had one catch for 9 yards, and then it was like, let's find the big guy, and they targeted him 4 straight times on that opening drive, and that really opened up everything else.
Golic
makes me want to vomit and then punch you square in the face.
And Wingo.
Oh, he's saucy today.
You know who's having the time of his life right now? That would be our intrepid NFL reporter based in Southern Jersey, a Wawa regular, a paper-holding wonderful person, our NFL reporter Sal Palantonio joining us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Get the feeling of being rewarded with gold status at Shell with the Fuel Rewards program. Download the Fuel Rewards app, join, and start saving 5 cents a gallon today. Sal, the most amazing thing to me about what's happened so far is I just saw in SportsCenter they did a live shot with Jordan Renan from downtown Philadelphia, and the streets were clear. I thought for sure they'd still be going strong at about 8 o'clock this morning.
Well, I think people are walking around the houses in their pajamas like zombies. Is this real? I've talked to, 5 or 6 dozen people since the end of the game back home, and everyone has said the same thing. I've gotten text after text and email after email, and everybody says the same thing. Sal, did that really happen last night? Is that real? I think people, there was such an eruption of joy from fans all across the region, from Harrisburg to Atlantic City, from Allentown all the way down to Delaware. And I think people are waking up and realizing it happened, and they're trying to process it. It really is truly remarkable when you consider that the Empire State Building in the city of New York was lit up in green last night. What a capper to the night. It just says that this team was totally embraceable from coast to coast, that people loved this team, and that it had a special bond with one another, and that people really wanted it to succeed.
Yeah, Broad Street was full last night, and we hope everybody was safe. I'm sure we'll find out more.
Yeah, people were safe for sure.
It was fantastic.
And downtown Minneapolis was crazy last night, and I walked into the hotel at about 2 hours, 3 hours ago, 4 hours ago. I didn't sleep. Nobody slept. People were just like sitting around quietly. It was eerie. And I'll tell you this story, and I still can't believe it happened. We're sitting, drinking a couple beers, having some pizza in the lobby of the Marquette Hotel downtown. There's about 200, 250 Eagles fans just sitting around quietly talking. It was eerie. It wasn't like a total celebration. People were just sort of processing it. And in walks M. Night Shyamalan, the horror director, the guy who has, put the eerie in eerie, right? And he walks in, and we all are looking at each other. Is that really him? Are we in a movie about ourselves? Are we actually walking around as zombies in his movie? Is this real? And so he says hi to everybody, and then we all get into the elevator with him, and we're looking at each other like, man, we're in some kind of dream. And this guy is writing the script for us. It was truly one of the most surreal moments I have ever felt. And we all felt it together. Eagles fans from everywhere. We were like, what just happened?
Well, it's funny you put that in that perspective, Sal, as he joins us now on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, because you and I worked Super Bowl 36 together when the Patriots beat the very heavily favored Rams, and after that game, because the Patriots, there's a whole generation of people that don't know the Patriots for what they were before 2001. They were the laughable losers, and there was this guy I remember leaving the Superdome. And he was just sitting on a corner in Bourbon Street with a Patriots jersey on and a Patriots hat, and just his head was in his hands. He's like, I can't believe the bleeping Patriots actually won the Super Bowl, because they were a joke before then. And the Eagles had always been that, nice try sort of situation. So how ironic that the Eagles flipped the script, Sal, against the team that had sort of flipped their own script 17 years ago.
Yeah, when all of these droughts end, there's a catharsis that goes through a city. There's a celebration. There's the moment where you process it and realize that it did happen. And then the emotions start to pour out, because it's not one generation. The last time they won it was in 1960. So we're talking about 4 generations of people who have been spelling fatalism with a PH. And now that all is gone. It changes your behavior. It changes your attitude. It changes everything. There's a reason why last night in Philadelphia on Broad Street, nothing was harmed. No damage was done. The place is cleaned up this morning. It's because the outcome of the game changed your behavior. Now you can feel a sense of respect.
Well, let's go to that. Let's just give people some perspective. December 26, 1960, the date of the Eagles' last title. The NFL teams, there were 13 of them. The president was Dwight Eisenhower. The Patriots were in their first season in the AFL, and Bill Belichick was 8 years old. So that's a perspective of these Philly fans who have been there decades rooting for this team. And we had Malcolm Jenkins on a little earlier, Sal, and he said, we can't wait to get back to Philly. What is the schedule? When are they getting back to Philly? And what is the anticipation of just how many people are going to be at that airport?
Yeah, I'm guessing tens of thousands. I'm guessing it's John, Paul, George, and Ringo, size crowd. That's what I'm anticipating. Right now, I'm about to leave the hotel, go to the Mall of America, and cover the MVP trophy press conference with Nick Foles and Doug Peterson and Commissioner Roger Goodell, and then it's back to Philly. And it's such a great story. It's such a great headline. Nick Foles authored a comeback drive in the fourth quarter to beat the greatest quarterback of all time. And so it's a script you can't write. And I think the reason why it happened to this team is they formed a special brotherhood through love and respect for one another, and a belief and a resiliency that they could, in fact, do it. And then a coach who was not afraid ever, not afraid once, showed, as we say in South Philly, the cojones, call it.
Well, yeah.
On fourth down and goal to go, and call that play, which he now calls the Philly special.
Well, not only that one, Sal, but the fourth down to keep the drive alive on the game-winning drive that led to the Zach Ertz touchdown catch. I mean, if there was ever a case, Sal, to make the case for the coach to be the MVP of the Super Bowl, it might have been this one.
Yeah. Well, you're calling fourth and goal. You're calling a pass to a quarterback. And in Super Bowl history, a quarterback's never caught a touchdown pass. And you're not only going to do that, you're going to say, we can do this even if you can't, because Tom Brady doesn't catch the ball. The irony of that really, I think that play electrified that team. They went into the halftime locker room with a belief. But, the bottom line is it was a 12-round fight. Nobody wanted to go down. Everybody was throwing haymakers. It was really, in my view, one of the greatest Super Bowls of all time.
was so entertaining, and the only downside as a former defensive player is a little difficult when you're setting records for yardage on the field. but hey, if you're on the winning side of it, you forget about it really quickly as your crown champion. And one other thing that's going to start to happen, Sal, as we move a day and another day and another day away from this is if the phone rings for Philadelphia, what's the offer they would accept to trade for Nick Foles? You know that's the next thing coming. One more year on his deal at $7.6 million, and you know everybody has a price. So what would that price be for Philadelphia?
Michael, I love you. I respect you. I only could dream of being on this radio program on the day after the Eagles won the Super Bowl. But to get that answer, you're going to have to dial 1-800-ADAM Schefter because you're not getting that answer from me.
Look, I'm telling you, I'm with you, Sal. I'm not sure there's a way he's leaving because there's
a price. It's just a matter of somebody will pay it or not.
But you just don't know when Carson Wentz is going to be healthy.
I agree completely.
So why would you do that? Let's move on to something that may be a little more. I don't know. Look, I hear what you're saying.
Listen,
everybody comes with a price.
It's the reality of the sport. We can move on all we want, but it's the reality of the sport that's a possibility. So,
it hasn't even sunk in that they won the game yet.
I know. It's so true, isn't it?
He's such a radio guy.
People are still walking around the hotel lobby right now. Did this really happen?
Yeah.
That's what's going through people's minds. So I'm sure that question will come up to Nick Foles at today's press conference, and as soon as I get it, I will bring it to you. I promise.
in real-time reporting, as Sal Pell likes to say. Hey, Sal, before we let you go, there's one other thing that we have to talk about, and we were giving it a little discussion with Timmy Hasselback the last half hour. The decision to not play Malcolm Butler, a guy who had been on the field for 97.8% of the defensive snaps of the regular season, only got in on the one punt. He did not play a single defensive snap, and they said he was healthy. It was a coach's decision for a guy who sealed Super Bowl 49 just 3 years ago. That's an amazing turn of events for that cornerback.
Well, I think it definitely affected the team because based on the reporting of our colleagues with the Patriots, it sounds like a lot of the players on the team were shocked by it. And, Malcolm Butler not being on the field certainly affects the outcome of the game. There's no question about it. Him being on the sideline. So, but you have to think, okay, people are on the sideline. The players are wondering what's going on, and that had to affect them. But, to me, it's one of those odd decisions that, we'll never have an answer to because I don't think Bill Belichick is going to open up his notebook on that for us.
Yeah. Can confirm.
Yeah.
That won't happen. Sal, go to the MVP and then go do what everyone else was doing in Philadelphia when you get back. Jump off the Ritz-Carlton awning, will you? Do that.
No. I promise I'm going to be on a float live down Broad Street on NFL Live with Trey Wingo. I promise.
All right. All good, brother. Sal, always good to have you on the show.
Thanks, Sal.
Enjoy the day, pal.
Thank you so much.
This has been the Best of Golic and Wingo podcast. Make sure to subscribe on the ESPN app, Apple Podcasts, and to listen every weekday morning at 6 Eastern on ESPN Radio, ESPN2, and the ESPN app.